And before we begin, I'm going to ask the town manager to read the disclaimer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a reminder to everybody out there, as you just heard, this meeting's being recorded so we can post it for consumption later on. I'm going to ask that any audience members hold your questions or comments until you've been called on. I know a few of you were able to sign up using the sign-up sheet that we sent around. Also, you can use the raise hand feature if you would like to make a comment so that we can put that list together. If for some reason this meeting gets interrupted, I don't anticipate that being an issue since we have a meeting waiting room rather. We'll immediately end it, disseminate new login information and restart up. But for anybody that is trying to log on, if you could please respond to any requests for last name before so that we can identify you. And for any residents that do wish to speak tonight, please ask that you identify yourself with your name and street so that we have that for the record as well.
Okay, and also, could you please explain how the chat works and how they communicate with you?
Yes, I am making it so that the chat is essentially one way in the sense that you can chat with me, you can send me a message, for example, if you would like to make a comment, but that the chat doesn't work as a whole group chat because that can get distracting and leads to some people speaking out of turn at times as well. So feel free to send me a chat if you'd like. I can chat back with you if you have any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so tonight we have one agenda item, and that is the consideration for the council to take a unified position on the Thrive 2050 plan that is currently before the Montgomery County Council. And the way we're going to proceed tonight is first, the town manager is going to give a staff report, which includes a lot of the history of the of Thrive. And in addition, he will be reading the draft of a letter to the county council that has been drafted primarily by Council Member Kumar with input from Council Member Heller, and I assume all the other council members. Once he reads, after he gives his staff report, then I will take questions from the council. And then after that, we will go into public hearing where any resident or guest will be given the opportunity to present testimony, hopefully up to 3 minutes, but it depends on how many people sign up because we don't want this meeting to go on forever. And then after that, that public hearing part will close, and then the council will debate amongst themselves and decide how they wish to proceed at this time. And I greatly appreciate, I know the council does too, all of the work that has gone into preparing for tonight, and also the number of residents that are interested and hopefully will be interested in the future. So with that, I will turn it over to our town manager to give the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This oral report is an abridged version of a longer report that I've written that I'll make available for the council and for the general public as well. Just some quick background to begin with. The foundation for planning in Montgomery County is its general plan. And the general plan is amended periodically to account for demographic and infrastructure changes within the county and to continue to channel growth along major roads while preserving open spaces, farmland, and low density residential uses. excuse me. THRIVE is the latest iteration and update to that general plan, which also underwent comprehensive refinements in 1969 and 1993. Since 2018, Montgomery County Planning Board has been working internally on the THRIVE document with the goal of using it as the lodestar for county planning through 2050. It's important to note that as a general plan, THRIVE Montgomery 2050 is not self-implementing. It does not automatically change any zoning or other regulations. Implementation of its policies will rely on several tools, including zoning text amendments, which require separate passage by the County Council. THRIVE Montgomery 2050 sets 3 broad overarching priorities for the county: economic health, equity, and environmental resilience. And those goals are targeted through recommendations organized into 6 chapters, as they call it: compact growth, complete communities, designs, arts and culture, transportation and communication networks, affordable and attainable housing, and parks and recreation. Much of the discussion in Somerset has revolved around the question of affordable and attainable housing. In December of 2020, County Council member Will Giwando sponsored zoning text amendment, also colloquial known as ZTA 20-07, which would allow owners of R60 zone properties located within 1 mile of a metro rail station to build missing middle housing types, including duplexes, townhouses, and multifamily structures. Councilmember Hans Reamer also provided a draft proposal on missing middle housing. The proposals from council members Giwando and Reamer, which the County Council did not vote on and which have not been scheduled for a public hearing, prompted the County Council to ask the Planning Board for a ZTA of their own, taking into consideration the proposals from the 2 council members. The Planning Board developed in response an affordable and attainable housing initiative, which is separate from THRIVE Montgomery 2050. However, those recommendations align with some of the goals and recommendations that are included in THRIVE. The Planning Board completed preliminary staff recommendations, which are continuing to be refined through work sessions. And following review and approval from the Planning Board, those recommendations are expected to be transmitted to the Montgomery County Council. The Planning Board and County Council have pushed back the timeline for consideration of the affordable and attainable housing in order to first finalize THRIVE. So next, I wanted to give a brief overview of the timeline and process. The Planning Board began work on THRIVE in 2018. The first draft of the plan was released in September of 2020, and a public hearing was held in November of last year. The County Council's Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee recently released a draft, which is now available online, and I'll share the link with folks. The County Council is planning to hold a listening session on this updated proposal on either November 30th, December 1st, or December 2nd. There's otherwise currently no schedule for full council review of THRIVE, and similarly, there's no schedule for consideration of the Attainable and Affordable Housing Initiative. The Planning Board completed preliminary staff recommendations on its Attainable and Affordable Housing Initiative, but are continuing to be refined through Planning Board work sessions. Following review and approval from the Planning Board, the recommendations will be transmitted to the Montgomery County Council. And as I mentioned, that timeline has been pushed back to first finalize THRIVE. Since fall of 2020, the town of Somerset has been invited to participate in what's known as the Neighborhood Coalition, a group made up of 27 municipalities in Montgomery County, including Chevy Chase Village, the town of Chevy Chase, the Kenwood Citizens Association, and at the village of Friendship Heights, among others. And that group has worked to present a unified stance on Thrive Montgomery 2050 and associated ZTAs. You may recall that Naomi Spinrad, a member of the coalition representing Chevy Chase West Neighborhood Association, spoke at the town forum last month. Somerset signed the initial letter sent by the coalition in November 2020, which highlighted suggestions and concerns related to the 6 chapters in the Thrive plan. Mayor Slavin testified before the county council on June 17th, coordinating testimony with council member from the town of Chevy Chase in support of the coalition's positions. Tonight, Somerset council members Kabir Kumar and Debbie Heller are presenting a draft letter for the Somerset Council to consider as submission to the Montgomery County Council on Thrive. The letter outlines 5 statements summarizing the Somerset Council's collective point of view on Thrive. They are, in summary, that Somerset supports the drivers behind Thrive, inclusivity and diversity, and the need to address climate change. 2, there's been insufficient public consultation on Thrive during the pandemic. 3, COVID-19 has altered the long-term patterns of working and living, and those changes must be better understood and incorporated into the Thrive plan. 4, there are trade-offs between development and unlocking housing stock from Somerset and maintaining a community, particularly the speed at which housing stock is unlocked. And 5, the level and speed of further development would impact climate change mitigation efforts, particularly in the town. Furthermore, the letter presents 4 recommendations to address the above concerns. They are: 1, to provide additional opportunities for community engagement, working with local governments, and wait to vote on the proposal until after a mandate is given in the election. Number 2, conduct a study specific to the effects of COVID-19 on work and living. Number 3, provide an opportunity for testimony related to climate change and how that might inform Thrive's frameworks. And 4, incorporate within Thrive a managed and or phased approach to attainable housing. The Somerset Council is also considering a statement and recommendation to the Planning Board on attainable housing strategies. Somerset is planning a public hearing to consider affordable and attaining housing recommendations in greater detail, and also include County Council members Will Giowando and Hans Reamer in those discussions to better explain and better answer questions regarding their text amendments. It's also important that all residents interested in this issue make their personal views known to the County Council by making comments, attending listening sessions, and public hearings. Thank you.
Thank you. That was excellent. And I again wanted to point out that that is a summary of a longer document that Matt has prepared. And I do urge all interested residents to get a copy of that and read it, because part of our responsibility in Somerset, since we don't have the power to vote on Thrive, but we do have the power to influence the decision makers. And it's very important for all of us to be as informed as possible so that when we do write and send our comments, that they are significant and meaningful. And the way to do that is to be armed with information. And I also want to point out that while perhaps the County Council might listen a little closer to what elected officials like me and our council say, honestly, everybody who's interested, who comments on this Thrive 2050, all their comments are important. So don't forget that, and please participate in the engage. It's not as Matt pointed out, it's not going to be imminently decided, but it is going to be decided eventually. And the earlier you get in your comments, the better. So with that, I will turn it over. I will take questions from the council, and then we will take comments from our residents and guests, and then I will turn it over to the council to make a decision. So Council President Circa, do you have any questions about the draft or the staff report?
Well, first I want to say thank you to our town manager, Matt, for the staff report. I thought you did an excellent job concisely capturing the issue and some of the background here. Before we ask questions, I was hoping that Councilmember Kumar could briefly describe how he developed this letter, how he pulled it together, you know, some of the inputs that he received and perhaps some of the philosophies behind it. And I'd also just like to share with council members here, my personal hope or goal here is that we can all come together in consensus on on language for a letter that we all support to the county. Is that okay to sort of turn over
Good.
here for a few
Councilmember
moments?
Kumar, Councilor Kumar,
Thank
please
you.
answer the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Slavin, and thank you, Council President Circo, and thanks, Matt, for a great summary, and thank you for setting the stage for this. You know, Debbie Heller and I worked jointly on this letter. I held the pen, but we extensively consulted on the letter, and I took general guidance from you, Steve. We spoke about sort of your perspectives and philosophies, and I was informed greatly by the discussion we've been having in our town since we held the session with the planning board, with Gwen Wright and other members, the learning session we had held on THRIVE and attainable housing strategies, primarily the remarks made by Director Gwen Wright from the planning department. And so we've had a discussion in our town on the listserv. There have been emails to the council, there have been emails to me, there have been emails to others. And all of those things have informed the current draft. And I'm hoping the discussion today, the remarks from our town residents today will further sort of sharpen our thinking on this front. As you heard from Matt, we are telling the county council, which is going to consider a vote on THRIVE 2050, that we support the key drivers behind THRIVE. We support the desire for inclusivity. We support the goals of diversity. We want to address climate change. I think this is a shared view of our council and of our town. But there are a number of concerns we have. Number one, that the THRIVE consultation process has been inadequate. Most of it was during the pandemic. As you heard Director Gwen Wright, she talked about, you know, that they sent 90,000 postcards. You know, 90,000 postcards are arguably woefully inadequate for a 100-page plus document that can arguably shape the future of this county. We believe the pandemic has changed the way we work and live. None of us know exactly how, but clearly there is a change and we are starting to feel it. One possibility is the emergence of a blended workforce. The other possibility is our desire for folks to retire in place versus retirement communities. So there might be other forces at play that potentially go at the heart of what THRIVE is and go at the heart of what is a general plan. And then as we have been discussing, I think a number of us in the council have had this conversation. I think there's a live debate in the town that yes, there has been a sort of exclusionary dimension to single family housing zones. And yes, our homes are woefully unaffordable to folks with lesser means. And that there is, you know, a need to unlock housing stock, and potentially a town can play a role in that. But the big question we have is, at what point does that unlocking lead to a loss of community, put added pressure on our services, on our infrastructure? Those questions remain unanswered. These are the recurring questions from town residents. Even the council is unable to adequately answer those questions. And we need to answer those questions to be able to feel comfortable with the direction of this plan. And so while we agree with the broad statements that, yes, we need to unlock housing stock and contribute to access and growth in the town, but at what level and at what pace and at what degree? And that's the other statement we make. And it's against those statements. And of course, the most important thing, arguably, is that as we are learning, we have committed, we have hired a consultant, an expert. We are developing a report on stormwater. And we've learned, for example, that we have 8 unique watersheds in our town. This is based on GIS data and survey data. And so there is this sort of combined effect of the unique topography and the unique watershed conditions of our town and the added rainfall brought about by climate change. And that's unique to our town, arguably. It may be happening elsewhere, but we know for a fact that it's unique to our town. And so that's another reasonable question we have, is that what does this mean? The pace and change of development, what does that mean given the unique topography and underlying conditions of our town? So it's against those statements, informed by our discussion with Director Gwen Wright and all the inputs we receive from the town, that we then make these recommendations, requesting for more consultation, requesting for a study on COVID, requesting for an opportunity for us, someone from the council or from our town testifying on our unique stormwater conditions. That was the statement that Matt made, testifying on climate change. And then potentially even at the level of THRIVE itself, even though it's a general plan and a high level plan, some sort of a framework that helps us understand a phased approach to achieving attainable housing, which right now, as Council Member Barr pointed out, is a very light one-pager on attainable housing. So we need a little bit more at the high level plan itself that can provide some guidance. So that's probably more than what you asked for, Steve, but gives you the full view on how this letter came to be.
That was perfect. Appreciate your background. And I also want to thank you and Debbie for the work you did in preparing this document for our consideration. I think it's well structured, and I think it successfully balances, I think, potentially competing objectives of supporting the vision of Thrive 2050 while also protecting the town of Somerset. One question I had, I know we had talked about getting inputs from various town committees, but time was kind of short. I don't know, are you able to speak to whether or not you received inputs from the committees, some, all of the committees?
Maybe Matt can answer that. You're muted, Matt.
Sorry. Yeah, some of the committees I know have discussed that in their committee meetings. I think it was difficult for them to isolate their specific area of expertise. And so none of the committees had any specific recommendations for the council in terms of supporting or not supporting Thrive, and are still sort of grappling with what the effects of it would be and how to balance their areas with, as you said, other areas that are sometimes competing against each other.
So, Mr. President, what I would say to that is that, yes, input from committees is very important, but it's not too late. So if the council develops a position tonight, and then if later on a committee recommends some kind of amendment or addition, then the council could consider writing another letter. It's not as if the hearing, the vote on Thrive has been scheduled, and more than likely, from the intel that we're getting, it's unlikely that Thrive is going to be voted on in this calendar year. But this does give us time to get, more input is better than less. So we will continue to encourage committees to share their expertise with the town government.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Town Manager. And I'd also say, we also welcome inputs from residents. I don't have any further questions at this time.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilor Barr, you're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, thanks. I had given some comments to Kabir earlier, and what I'm going to say is largely new to that. The letter has a lot of good in it that we've written, and I think it will do good as it stands. I think it will do better if we say something about our local context. It's a letter from Somerset, so putting our local context in, I think, is the right thing to do. And what is our local context? Friendship Heights is our local context. It's right next to us. And it is worth mentioning that it's right next to us, and worth mentioning that it is the densest housing zone near a transit station in Montgomery County already. And it's getting denser. That is to say, there's a new development coming in on Wisconsin Avenue. It's going to be 12 blocks high. That'll be condos mainly. It has a mix of housing in it in terms of affordability. Some is totally unaffordable, some of it is expensive, and some of it actually is affordable in Friendship Heights. Friendship Heights also has room for more development. The Geico building there has been rumored to be going down for 20 years now. And certainly that area could be developed further into a town center or whatever other imaginative architects care to draw there. These are the closest areas to Friendship Heights. We are the small community of single family homes within that zone. We are vastly outnumbered by condos and apartments at the moment. So that local context, I think, is important. And also, I think the one thing I'd like to see in Thrive is a reference to local conditions in Thrive. There is no reference to local conditions in Thrive at all at the moment. And local conditions vary enormously. So yes, we have the densest housing zone in Montgomery County right next to us on the way to Friendship Heights Station. Other areas have nothing like that. But Wheaton, for example, has a lively community at the moment who are very worried about gentrification in their local context. And so bringing that up, just with a reference to local context in Thrive, would at least open the door to consideration as we move on to attainable housing and affordable housing. But for this letter, what I'm saying is bring up the local context. Okay.
Thank you very much. And of course, you will have the opportunity to discuss that with the council at the appropriate time tonight, but thank you for bringing it up now. Councilmember Heller. You're muted. Thank you.
I absolutely agree with everything that Robin just said. I think that was great, Robin. And I was wondering one other thing as we're sitting here talking, and as I've read some of the responses that the town members have sent in that are pretty heartfelt about how they feel about this. And I'm wondering if what we put together as a council could if it's appropriate to have accompanied to that a petition from our town, signed by all of our neighbors. I just wonder if that's our homeowners, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Well, that's a great idea. And I think when you discuss what you're going to do, bring that up, because that's a fantastic idea.
Okay. Well, I just want to, say, I want to thank everybody who's written to us for what you said, because some of it is great. Well, it's all great that you wrote, but there are a couple of comments that I went, yes, I totally agree here. So I look forward to working with everybody to try to mitigate this. But I want to say one other thing that, Marnie, I just wonder what you sent us today to read. I wonder if you could send out a version of that, maybe. I know you sent a lot, but your beginning letter, and it was 25 pages, but what you wrote was so good. I just wonder if it shouldn't
Okay, well,
go.
we'll make sure that gets distributed.
Yeah, because I think people in the town should read that, actually.
Okay, we will be
Thank you.
happy to distribute that because of
Okay.
course, no one is more knowledgeable on this topic than former President Shaw.
Right.
Did you have any other,
No, I just want to say I didn't know about Thrive. I'd never heard about Thrive. I don't think I got a postcard until May when Marnie sat down with me and said there's something called Thrive, and I went, what? So
well,
I'm just,
I want to congratulate you on all the time you've spent arming yourself with information since you got elected.
thank you. All right, I'm done.
And next, Councilor Kumar, did you want to add anything or have any questions of the staff report?
I only quickly to also thank all the residents who've written in, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from them today. So looking forward to getting to that part of our meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rovak.
No, I think that Marnie's letter also like really has some great points. And my number one question if I was in front of the county is just with COVID and all the changes that have happened over the past 2 years with our workforce and people, fleeing big metropolitan areas and looking for lower cost of living, do they still think that 200,000 more people are going to be moving, to this area by 2050? And I think that that's a big question that I have, because it seems like the data might be kind of not relevant anymore. And that's it. So.
Okay, thank you. So now we will go to the next part of the agenda where we hear from the residents. And before I have Matt calling people. Do we have an idea of how many people wish to speak tonight?
I guess I would just do one final call if you wanted to make a comment and did not submit your name, to raise your hand or send something to the chat with me. Otherwise, I believe we have 3 people who had signed up ahead of time to make comments this evening.
And then does that include Lucy Freeman?
That does not include Lucy Freeman, whose
Okay,
hand I see raised right now.
If 4 people wish to comment, we will ask that you limit your testimony to 3 minutes and to please focus on commenting on the contents of the letter as opposed to Thrive in general, because the point of tonight is the council deciding on what they want to write to the council. And any comments you have about Thrive, which are completely valuable and valid, we would ask that you direct to the county council, and Matt can help you facilitate that. So with that, who is first?
First up is Marnie Shaw.
Excellent.
Thank you. My name is Marnie Shaw and I live on Uppingham Street. I've submitted a longer statement for the record that includes more detail than I can cover in 3 minutes. I am opposed to the current version of the Thrive 2050 for 2 reasons: a flawed public process and flawed content. As currently conceived, Somerset would be affected by Thrive because all of Somerset is within a crow's fly mile of the metro and would be subject to inclusion of multifamily dwellings. Thrive designates Wisconsin Avenue and River Road as development corridors, and under some proposals, 19-unit buildings could be built not only along River Road, but 500 feet into Somerset, for example, on Greystone and Lower Trent. The process is flawed because most county residents are unaware of what is being proposed and how it will affect them. During the past 2 years, health and family issues have consumed people's attention. I believe more time is needed for residents to weigh in on this 30-year plan. I also think the content of Thrive 2050 is flawed. Here are some of my major concerns. Montgomery County has had 0 net job growth over 15 years, and this version of Thrive does not address the lack of job growth. Thrive presumes that over the next 30 years, Montgomery County will have to provide housing for an additional 200,000 residents. But I don't understand why people would move to Montgomery County instead of Northern Virginia, where job growth is strong. Thrive focuses on attainable housing, not affordable housing. I think we can all agree that we need more affordable housing, but this plan does not provide detailed strategies for how affordable housing can be created and existing affordable housing protected. Thrive should focus on the use of traditional master plan processes to specify zoning changes and not one size fits all for the entire county. Careful consideration of where multifamily housing is placed would tailor initiatives to local conditions and help with public support. Successful implementation in selected areas would provide a good basis for broader application. Thrive does not focus on the cost of infrastructure to provide its complete communities. Thrive should include a chapter about the potential costs of its initiatives and how they will be paid for, especially if job growth continues to be zero. Last week, incoming County Council President Gabe Albornoz said that in his opinion, the Thrive Plan is not ready. He stated that he isn't confident the plan will achieve its housing goals, that stormwater issues need more attention, and that more local feedback is needed. Somerset can help by providing a unified statement about Thrive to the County Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Who are you calling on next, Mr. Town Manager?
The next person who had signed up is David Sachs. I don't know if, yep, we have David here.
I see he's here.
Hello, good evening. So I guess thank you for holding this hearing. Very much appreciated, and it's really in the spirit, now I understand, of what is being asked in the draft letter. I am happy to see the draft letter. I did not see the draft letter before 5 minutes ago, and I'm being asked to comment on the draft letter. We found out about this hearing, I guess it was late last week. And so if what we're talking about is public information and public input, I would suggest that that needs to take place at all levels, certainly at the county level, as I understand the draft is asking for. And I would also say at the town level. So I'm not as well prepared as I would like to be and customarily try to be before, making statements about a document. But what I will say is I find a lot to like in Thrive. I'm not as much of an expert on Thrive as probably most of the people in this Zoom room, and those critiques of Thrive, I am, certainly open to considering and understanding more fully, including the questions about COVID, the questions about job growth, the questions about population growth, and the issues with tailoring Thrive to local contexts and conditions. I can agree with all of those general principles as I have heard them articulated here. I am also someone who understands, I think, the philosophy of attainable housing and how that fits. It is not affordable housing, as has been said again tonight, but attainable housing is part of a countywide housing strategy, and I believe that it has value in its own right, and I'm glad that the planning board is working to refine it. And if someone can, I know that it's a work in progress, if someone here can explain to me what happened in the latest hearing on November 4th with regard to attainable housing, I would, really be glad to be enlightened about that.
We'll get back to you. We'll get back to you on that. And as
okay,
have you does that conclude your remarks?
No, I have,
Go ahead.
I just have one more minute.
Go for
I
it.
would say that I hope that we have continued discussions, not only informing town residents about THRIVE, about attainable housing, and about how we can participate, but also about our values. Because I am a person who believes that we in Somerset need concern ourselves not only with what THRIVE has for me, but what THRIVE does for our entire county. And I believe that we are blessed with valuable property, with high levels of education and civic involvement, and that we should be contributing to solutions not only for Somerset, but at the county-wide level. And as we form our opinions, we should consider that. How well will THRIVE help all of us, our county's people, and our land and natural resources to countywide towards the year 2050 and beyond? And I believe that there's not been sufficient discussion within Somerset, even about these values questions. And I would like to see more of that as well.
Okay, well, thank you. And as Matt pointed out in his staff report, there will be an upcoming forum, public information session, where the two council members will be able to explain their ZTAs, which are not currently pending, but did start a discussion at the county council level of those topics. And then just to remind everyone that as the staff report points out, this attainable housing document that we're all interested in, which the county council requested after council member Jawando's ZTA was taken up the first time. That is, we were informed today that while they promised that it will come out in December, that's not certain. But per the request of several council members, including Councilmember Kumar, we will be having a separate evening to discuss that document, which I think you will be very interested in. So never fear that I think that you'll be satisfied with what we're doing to educate our residents. And thank you for your comments.
May
Mr.
I say even a quick, I just wanted to say that in response to Mr. Sachs' comment, just as a way of quick guidance to the town, if I may, it is completely unreasonable for you to react to a letter you've seen just minutes ago. So I think what would be really useful is your views on THRIVE along the lines of how Marnie laid them out and how you have, David. And so we would really welcome that, and that will inform our discussion that will follow. And then we will try and capture that in the letter. And I think we have attempted to do that based on everything we've heard today. So don't feel the pressure to respond to the letter as much as take the time to give us your quick views.
Yes, that's why I pointed out when I answered the question from the council president that it's vital that we receive committee input, and this is not at the last minute, because the THRIVE hasn't been scheduled for a vote, and it likely, as former President Shaw pointed out, it's unlikely to take place this year because Councilmember Albanese will be becoming the council president on December 1st. And as he indicated at that hearing, he has a lot of problems with THRIVE. So I can't imagine he's going to schedule a vote. And plus there's going to be, as was pointed out, there's going to be a listening session, and the date hasn't been set yet, but as soon as it's set, we will let you know, because we will be urging everyone to sign up to testify. So thank you. Who's next, Mr. Town Manager?
Right now we have two folks left who have asked to speak. The first of which is Lucy Freeman.
Wonderful.
Oh, Okay, I'm Lucy Freeman. I live on Fallstone at 4719 Fallstone. I really appreciate everything that David Sachs said. I have not seen this letter. I guess somebody who's better at technology could look at the screen and the letter at the same time, but I cannot do that. But I'm glad to hear that in the letter there is support for the basic values of Thrive. And throughout the whole discussion everyone's been having on the listserv and other places, I've thought about what Jamie Raskin always says. He wants to be in the moral center. And I think that we want the stands we take to reflect our values. Somerset is a small town and a little puddle in a big county of over 1 million people. And what we're talking about, at least what I'm talking about, is what should be the county plan to do these many years from now for everyone in the county. I support strongly the equity, the housing, and the environment. I think when I look at, I believe what Kumar said, look at his letter, and they are delaying actions. He's saying we support your values, but we want more meetings. We want more meetings, study COVID, study the climate. We have a crisis in our world. We've been watching people in Glasgow, and there be people sitting there saying, this is what we're going to do, making no commitments. And the activists are outside urging people before tomorrow to take steps. And I feel that our town statement is just, we don't like this, so we're going to pretend we like it, say we support the values, but we're going to try to slow down the process. We all know that the environment is changing. We all can hope that jobs will come, over the next years. But I think we can't just delay it forever. Let us act, and let's act with our values. I know many people in town who support affordable, attainable, middle income housing, who support the environment, who support equity and want to do what is in Thrive. I guess that's it.
Thank you very much.
I'll mute.
Mr. Manager, is there anybody else?
Yes, Leanne Bannister had indicated that she wished to speak. Don't forget to unmute, Leanne.
Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody as well for all their hard work on this. In regards to the letter, I think, it has some good points, but I think I would like it to acknowledge more that, zoning was deliberate and discriminatory, and that, that these zoning laws have come about to try and help, and that zoning affects everything in our society, our economy, where we congregate, schools, education, and when we work. And although zoning can't be a solution, it has to be addressed. So understanding how we can empower people to make change can help public welfare. The issue, I think, with Thrive is that we don't want zoning to exacerbate what they're trying to do further with segregation. So I think more needs to be done. Maybe the language needs to be more inclusive and more intentional in the solutions. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And as I pointed out earlier, and as I discussed with the chair of our Equities and Inclusion Committee today, please feel free to take this topic up in your committee and make recommendations for further positions that our council can take, because I do think that what you're talking about, everybody agrees with for the most part in town. So thank you for bringing that up. It's very valuable. And with that, is there anybody else, Mr. Town Manager?
No, the only other thing that I would like to mention as it pertains to comments is that we did receive, I believe it was 5 comments, 4 comments from residents who were not able to make the meeting this evening. But in the summary of this meeting and on the town website, I'll make those comments available so that residents can see those, and assure those folks that did take the time to write those letters that they have been distributed to the council, and the council has looked through them and appreciates your feedback as well.
Okay, thank you. And also for the record, I will point out that we will send the link to this meeting to the county council so that all of the important comments that residents made can be put on the official record for Thrive. And with that, so now that will conclude the public participation part of this meeting, and I will turn it over to the council president so that the council can to lead the discussion and final decision for tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much to all of the residents who shared their viewpoints, whether in person in this Skype or via submitted comments. This is a big deal that we're wrestling with, and my sense of the comments is most folks support Thrive 2050 or the vision of Thrive 2050, but there's a fair range of comments on some of the specifics of the language that we're considering in a letter that the council would sign. I guess as the drafter of the document, Kabir, I don't know if you would, if there are any final edits you would recommend we consider, or if you would propose that we just go with to discuss the version as is.
I would, what I can do is I do want to respond to, a couple of the suggestions that were made, not to necessarily, just to acknowledge them and to try and see whether as council, we believe collectively that we are addressing these comments. So, in terms of Leanne's, the last comment, I don't know if everyone attending here is aware of this. So we have the letter, which is 2 pages, but we're also submitting a 4 to 5 page supporting memo, which details each of the statements that we are making. And in that memo, and this is in response to what Leanne highlighted, we do say very upfront, we recognize how single family zoning has been part of a series of exclusionary policies that have kept communities of color and less affluent populations out of certain neighborhoods. So we do acknowledge the exclusionary effects of zoning historically. And it's definitely part, I think, of our shared views, because all of us, a number of us have weighed in on this letter. So that's one thing I wanted to respond to. I would welcome an opportunity or your suggestions to make that language more explicit. If it's useful, perhaps we can surface it even in the summary section if that's helpful. And then in terms of Lucy's comments on the immediacy, I think the one thing I would highlight is this is in part why we just adopted, I think, a stormwater ordinance that goes beyond county measures. I think that's part of us collectively trying to do things now in response to, the sort of mitigating the effects of climate change. In terms of what we can do, what we can control. So I would like to think that as a council, we are acting immediately on these factors. And I think that's what we would want to present to the county council. What are we doing? What are we learning? What is unique about our town on these factors? I think that would help them shape the high level policies that are taking place at the county level. So, I don't want to get into all aspects of it, but I do want to acknowledge the fact that we do recognize, I think, as a council, given our recent decisions, the immediate actions we need to take in response to climate change. But I would put it back to you, Steve, and the rest of the council, if there are any suggestions you would have for us to tighten the language and try and capture some of the comments that have been made. I think we can do that. My read of the written statements and the vast majority of the statements today, we seem to correspond to them. So Varney's statements and Morris's statements that were submitted, Josh's statements that were submitted. There were like 5-6 statements that have been submitted. I think we are largely corresponding to that. I think the only thing that would be a question in my mind is Leanne's final remark on how we can make the recommendations more inclusive. And perhaps one thing we can do is to surface one or two statements that we have in the longer memo up in the main body of the letter. And perhaps that could be a step forward.
Okay,
Perhaps can I respond to Kabir a little bit?
yes, thank you, Ron.
We've got to be very careful on climate. I think mentioning our stormwater problems is real, but THRIVE, the group there, believes that this is a solution to a climate problem, and they have a whole chapter on that in THRIVE. And they illustrate it with the Pike and Rose development, where they show that the Pike and Rose development actually manages stormwater far more effectively than the development that was there before Pike and Rose. And the saying generally is infill development is a much better way of handling climate than sprawl is, because infill development does not build new roads. Sprawl does build new roads, puts more cars on the road, and therefore contributes more to climate problems that way than infill development. So infill development really is part of the climate solution. And so they're making that case, and they make the case quite well. So if we bring up climate, we've got to bring it up very specifically in the context of stormwater only, I believe.
I agree. I totally agree. And I think that's what we have done. In fact, and I would agree with their analysis on infill development being more effective. And so I think there's a lot to, we are responding in our town to the effects of climate change. We are not taking steps to reverse climate change. And I think what they are proposing is a broader development measure to try and reverse the path that we're already on. So I appreciate that. And I think we cannot respond to that, but we can respond to what is unique, as you put it, Robin, unique to our town.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of those things. Debbie?
Maybe, I don't know if I just have this wrong or not, but the letters that I read from the town residents, it sound like they really supported THRIVE. Nobody supports it as is. There are a lot of flaws to it, and there needs to be, if we're going to go forward with THRIVE, we have to, almost start from the beginning with letting the stakeholders sit at the table and talk about all the things we've outlined. But I don't know, on the letters I read, I don't think they're so supportive, I have to say. I think the comments we heard tonight from town people were supportive of THRIVE.
Yeah,
Maybe I'm just not reading it right. I don't know.
I think we have to look at, go ahead. Sorry, Robin.
Yeah, it's which target are you shooting at is clearly what I'm trying to say. There is the attainable housing strategy document, and that's the one that should be the target, frankly, because that is the one that spells out the multi-unit housing that would come to Somerset under that plan. THRIVE itself does not do that. THRIVE just as a general statement on we need more housing of all types is basically what the chapter heading is. And we need to put it in the corridors that we're developing, which are the 270 corridor and the 29 corridor. But they really don't get much further than that. That's it. It's a very short chapter.
Steve, if I may.
But it opens up the door to zoning.
Yeah, exactly. I think Debbie, to your point, we as the council, this would be my 2 cents, we need to listen to both sets of groups and
Right.
a whole diverse set of opinions, and we need to encapsulate that. And I think that's what this letter is attempting to do. That's what you and I have attempted to do. And regardless of our personal opinions and regardless for any one side, we have to try and capture the collective view. And Robin, I think that we need to shoot at both targets. And if any other targets are presented, we might need to go at that. I don't want to say shoot because that's not the thinking here. I think our thinking is we need to be part of the process. I think that's at the fundamental level of agreement we all have, that we are highly motivated. We care about the future of our community and the county, and we want to be part of the process.
Oh, right.
I think,
what I'm trying to say though is,
and
are we
one
against
quick
more
thought
attainable
there. One quick thought there, as Debbie was saying, THRIVE is the high level plan. We all recognize that doesn't automatically translate into specific policies, but it is the high level plan that guides all subsequent specific policies. So we must respond to that. And we have to do whatever we can. We may not end up changing any direction of this Titanic.
Right. Yes,
but
yes,
the
no
other
is the answer. In other words, I don't think we want to be against more attainable housing in Montgomery County.
In fact, in our letter, we're not against
aim at THRIVE like
we're not against it. In our letter, we don't say we are against attainable housing. I think this is a debate in our town, but in our letter, we are not concluding this debate.
Yeah,
right? We are saying if it's going to happen, it needs to be phased. What
I'm trying to say is you want to take the other path. That is to say, emphasize the local context, emphasize that we have very dense housing around the Friendship Heights metro station area. And what is important is to include in THRIVE references to the local context so that that can become part of the attainable housing document. I think that's a way to do it.
I agree. And
sorry, if I can just cut in.
Yeah, sorry.
Great dialogue here, but I've noted that one of our council members, we haven't had much of a chance to hear from her. So I was hoping that we should at least give Shannon an opportunity to.
Yes, please.
It's hard to get a word in this crowd. No, I mean, I think that, my personal view on like attainable housing and affordable housing that I think that I've heard tonight is that I'm all for it. And I think that, even if Somerset were to build duplexes or triplexes and we could try to make a situation work for attainable or affordable housing, I would be for that. But my concern is just developers going rampant. And, how do we control that kind of housing? And are there cities that have done it, that have success, where developers just don't walk away, with so much money in their pockets and it actually works, is my kind of take on it.
I see that Leanne has a hand raised. I don't think the public comment period is over, but let me play back what I suspect she might say, which is that there's a question mark on the sort of, pace of development. Fundamentally, I think there's one view that will say it will take a long time for all these changes to take into effect. Even if we are rezoned, that doesn't mean overnight suddenly we have doubled the housing stock. I think the other view would be we just don't know. We don't know how fast it would change. In fact, there's great reason to believe that it would be clearly accelerated. And I think that's part of the sentiment we are capturing in our letter, which we are saying we appreciate the efforts towards attainable housing as a high-level objective, Robin, in THRIVE, but it would be ideal to try and understand how fast it will go and what does it mean for a town like ours. Steve, I just want to add one thing, that Robin had a suggestion earlier about the local context and Friendship Height, and I have added that as a bullet in the memo as one of the background notes, So I think that's a great point, Robin, that we are surrounded by, in fact, I think Friendship Heights is one of the most dense areas in the county, if not on the eastern seaboard, according to Wikipedia. So we can definitely reflect that in our supporting memo, and I think that's a great suggestion. I've already made that edit, Steve, and I can circulate that.
Thank you, Kabir, and that change would probably be a help. I know we're past our time, and I'm concerned that I don't have a sense that we come together in complete agreement on precise language. I'm thinking that we're planning to have a formal council meeting next week on a separate subject, but we might be able to we might be able to consider some of the feedback you've heard and make some edits, and then we could perhaps take a vote on it next week.
Are you talking about for the beginning of the work session?
Yes, the AR, no, we have an ARP.
We have two, I think, next week, if I'm not, isn't that?
No, the next meeting is the work session next Monday.
No, I was thinking
Nothing
about the
else has
ARP.
been scheduled.
But yes, we could just put in a vote at the beginning of our work session.
Steve, I think I'm not heard. I mean, I think more time in the letter will definitely not hurt us. So I'm all for that. But I just want to highlight that it's important that we submit a joint statement. I think as Mayor Slavin highlighted, this is not the final word. I think we will, in fact, as much as we would like it to be, it is not going to be the final word. I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity to engage. And as Robin pointed out, I think we want to shift our energies after this to more deeply engage on attainable housing strategies. So I encourage us to rally around a joint statement sooner. So
okay, so what I would suggest is that given that the listening session has not been scheduled and it will not be before, it might have been scheduled, but they didn't necessarily know the date yet. But I would suggest that it's important that this letter be submitted before the listening session. And I do think it would be valuable if you're all up for it, that the draft as currently crafted be circulated to the committees and to the public, so that before you vote on it next Monday, you will hear from people about from residents in terms of any possible amendments.
That makes
but
sense.
I'm not sure.
That makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
But I'm not sure that you see, if you have it as part of the work session, you'll be taking away from your work session time. And you also, if you decide that you want to have a public hearing element of it, that might take up all the work session. So I'll leave that up to whatever you want to do, especially whatever you want to do, Mr. Council President.
Well, I'm just looking at delaying the vote to give a chance for final edits and final comments to be considered on the letter. But I'm not looking for another full hour plus open session. I hope we could have a vote at the beginning of the next meeting.
I think that's reasonable. I think I sincerely hope the town would bless us on this process. I think
it's not up to the.
I know, but I think
honestly, I think there's been great opportunity for public input and a lot of, so far, and a number of the comments that you received tonight were in writing anyway. So yes. I think that if we widely publicize the draft, and we specifically send it to the committees and then tell them they need to get their comments before Monday when the vote's going to take place, I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I hope David and others who are here, that gives them the time to also submit their suggestions, David Sachs and others who made remarks. And what I would do then, if Steve and the rest of the council is comfortable with, is make those edits I mentioned and send it over to you, Matt. And then we can go from there. We can send it to the committees. We can send it widely to the town. Does that work?
I think that works great.
I think that
we're aiming for near-term vote.
I think that sounds excellent.
Great.
Okay.
So I want to thank everyone for participating in this session tonight, in this meeting. And I want to congratulate the council for their preparation and how much they've been listening. And I think that for Councilmember Kumar in consultation with Councilmember Heller to come up with such a concise document is pretty good, you get a lot of credit. So let's move forward. And we will see everyone next Monday night at 7 o'clock.
One quick last thing. I do want to highlight Robin's, sort of emphasis that we come together on this letter next Monday. Let's hear from the town, but we move very quickly and shift our energies on the attainable housing strategy, which is developing in the planning department. And I think there are cause for huge questions and concerns around it. And I think we need to really engage. And Robin has already started putting thoughts together, and it's possible at the next Monday, Robin, potentially we can bring in, kind of facilitate some form of discussion on it if you're up for it. I think that would be good.
I don't think
We are ready. Okay.
It's not out yet, the final version, so we should
Right.
wait.
It's not going to be
To wait.
out at the
Okay.
earliest December, and I doubt it will be then. But as we,
I don't want to lose sight of that, and I don't want to be on a back foot like we've been
No,
on
no,
Thrive.
no,
I definitely want to stay ahead of that for sure.
we committed in a work session. To start the education process, and that's why the council came up with the idea that we would invite the two council members that made proposals, and in that forum, it will be the opportunity to begin to talk about.
Fine. So we'll use that as the kickoff point
Yeah.
on the. Okay.
But
Sounds
I
good.
think that's what you already asked me.
Yes, I did.
Manager.
Yes.
So,
Yes. All right. Cool.
okay. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody. See you
Bye-bye.
next Monday night at 7 o'clock. Great meeting.
Bye.